I hadn't been back to the cabin in over 20 years. When my grandfather died, my family more or less abandoned it, and I never had a reason to return until the will named me the sole inheritor. The lawyer's tone was oddly formal when he gave me the key. "It's best to settle the estate in person," he said. I thought it was just legal boilerplate. Looking back, maybe it wasn't. The cabin sat deep in the woods near the Canadian border, 4 hours from the nearest town. My childhood memories of the place were a patchwork of pine sap, campfires, and the musty smell of old books. But when I drove up the winding gravel path that late October afternoon, I was struck by how dead everything felt. The trees weren't just bare, they seemed skeletal. Even the wind felt reluctant to move. I parked, cut the engine, and sat for a moment. The cabin stood exactly as I remembered, wooden siding darkened by age, a slanted roof like it had shrugged in exhaustion. No lights, no electricity, just the solar lanterns I brought and the wood stove if I needed heat. I stepped onto the porch and unlocked the door. The creak was like an old man clearing his throat. Inside, dust lay thick over everything. My boots left clean tracks across the floorboards. I started with basic housekeeping, cracked a window, aired the place out, stacked the firewood. In the corner, a faded armchair sat in front of the fireplace. That was my grandfather's spot. I remembered him reading there, silent and unreadable, pipe smoke curling around his face like a ghost. There were no family photos, no calendars, no clocks. It was as if time had been erased here. I unpacked and decided I'd sleep in the back bedroom. The bed was intact, if stiff. The air smelled of cedar, but under it was something sour like mold or old sweat. I chalked it up to age and turned in early. That first night, I didn't sleep well. Around AM, I woke up freezing. The fire had died out. As I was adding wood, I noticed something strange. The front door was slightly ajar. I knew I had locked it. I told myself maybe I hadn't shut it all the way. The wind, maybe. Still, I slid the deadbolt into place before going back to bed. The second time I woke up, it was because I heard whispering, faint, like someone murmuring behind a closed door. I lay still, ear straining. It came from the living room. When I got up to check, the room was empty, but the armchair was turned slightly, like someone had just gotten up from it. I stood there for a long minute, listening to nothing. By morning, I was telling myself, I'd just been spooked by the isolation. City brain, craving background noise. I spent the day cleaning and exploring. The attic door was sealed shut, nailed closed with old rusted hardware. That struck me as odd. Why go to such lengths to keep an attic off limits? I made a note to pry it open later, curiosity gnawing at me. That evening, I found a journal in the desk drawer, leather bound, no name. I thought it might be my grandfather's, but the entries didn't read like him. The handwriting was spidery, the words disjointed. They talked about echoes in the walls and faces in the corners of mirrors. The last entry said, "They come when it's quiet. They want to be remembered." I closed the book, unsettled. That night, I heard scratching from the attic above. Not mice, to slow, to deliberate, like fingers dragging across the wood. I stood beneath the attic door and listened, trying to rationalize. Probably a raccoon, I thought, but deep down, something in me recoiled. There was a pattern to the sound, almost like it was writing. Sleep came in fits. I dreamed of my grandfather sitting in his chair, watching me, but his eyes were blank, his face blurred. When I looked directly at him, he opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. Only that same whispering, rising like wind through dead leaves. I woke up with a nosebleed. I hadn't had one since I was a kid. The days started blending. I'd find things moved, my lantern placed on the windowsill instead of the floor, the stove slightly ajar. Once, I found my toothbrush in the fireplace. I started writing things down to prove to myself I wasn't losing it. But the notebook would be missing for hours at a time, then reappear on the table, always open to a blank page. I finally forced the attic open on the fourth day. It was more like a crawl space, low and claustrophobic. Dust choked the air. At the far end, something glinted. I crawled forward and found a mirror, small, oval, with a silver frame etched with symbols I didn't recognize. I reached for it, and in that instant, I swear I saw someone standing behind me. I jerked back, banged my head, and scrambled out. There was no one there, but the image lingered tall, indistinct, like static in human form. I wanted to leave, but something held me there. Not physically. It was like my mind had roots in the cabin. When I thought about packing up, I'd lose hours. I'd find myself just sitting, staring at the fire. I started forgetting things. Basic stuff: how many days I'd been there, when I'd last eaten. My phone was useless, no signal. Once, I found a text to my sister in my drafts that I didn't remember writing. It said, "They want me to stay." That night, I burned the journal in the fireplace. The flames flared green. I thought it would help. It didn't. The whispering grew louder. Sometimes, I'd hear my name. Jamie, always in my grandfather's voice. I saw him again in a dream, but this time, he was smiling. His mouth stretched impossibly wide, and when he laughed, his face cracked. Not like skin splitting, like glass shattering from within. I woke up with scratches on my arms. Thin, precise. Letters, maybe. I washed them off, but felt something shift inside me, like a thread had snapped. That day, I found a photograph on the cabin wall that hadn't been there before. It was old and yellowed, my grandfather as a young man. But behind him was the mirror, and in the mirror was me. I stared at that photo for hours. It made no sense. I hadn't even been born when it was taken. My mind told me it was a trick. Maybe a layered image or a reflection artifact. But my gut said something else. That night, I didn't dream. I relived. I was 5, watching my grandfather light the fire. He turned to me and said, "One day, you'll understand. This place remembers." I had no memory of this moment, but it felt real. Too real. I woke up gasping, tears on my cheeks. My hands were filthy, covered in soot. I checked the fireplace. The ash was warm. I tried to leave the next morning, packed everything, got in the car, but the engine wouldn't turn over. Dead battery. I hadn't left a light on. I checked under the hood. Every cable had been cut. Cleanly, deliberately. I ran back inside to grab my phone. It was gone. I found it later that night, under the armchair cushion. Camera roll full of photos of me sleeping, staring at the mirror, one of me crawling into the attic. I hadn't taken them. I hadn't posed for them. In the last one, my eyes were black, and I was smiling. I stopped eating, couldn't keep food down. I felt like I was being drained. My skin looked wrong in the mirror, pale, stretched. My voice echoed strangely in the rooms. Once, I screamed just to see if it would bounce back. It didn't. It got swallowed. The mirror reappeared in the living room. I hadn't moved it. I approached it, trembling. My reflection was delayed, like it was thinking about how to respond. Then it blinked before I did. I turned away, but the image lingered, watching me leave. That night, I blacked out. When I came to, I was sitting in the armchair, the fire roaring. I was holding the journal again, but this time, the handwriting was mine. The word said, "You are the echo now." I dropped it and ran for the woods, barefoot, delirious. I don't remember getting out. I woke up in a hospital 2 days later, dehydrated and hypothermic. A hiker found me babbling in the forest, miles from the cabin. I asked about the place. No one could find it. The GPS coordinates I gave led to an empty clearing. No structure, no foundation, nothing. But I know it was there. I lived in it. It lived in me. My sister visited me in recovery. She said I'd been missing for 3 weeks. I had no memory of most of it. But sometimes, at night, I'd feel something watching, just outside the room, waiting for quiet. I moved to the city, tried to forget, but every now and then, I'll find things where they shouldn't be. My toothbrush in the oven, my shoes full of ashes. Once, I found the mirror again. In my closet, I smashed it. It reappeared on the wall the next day. I've stopped fighting it. Some nights, I hear the whispering return. I sit in the dark, and I listen. It's like tuning a radio. I catch fragments, voices I almost remember. Sometimes I hear my grandfather. Sometimes I hear myself. I've been writing everything down, like the journal wanted. I think that's how it spreads. Through memory, through story, through the telling. And I think that's why you're hearing this now. Because now, you remember it too. And if you find a mirror in your house you don't remember buying, don't look too long. It doesn't show who you are. It shows who you were before. Before the cabin. Before the whispering. Before you became the echo.